Thank you for tuning in to another episode of One More Story. Just a quick programming note, parents, if you'd like to skip past the interview and go straight to the first story, you can find it at the 15-minute, 25-second mark. But the subscription option is there for you if you prefer to put on just the stories for the kids. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's episode. My guest tonight is AUSTIN HIGHSMITH GARCES. She is an actor, an acting teacher, a writer, a stand-up comic, and a children's book author. AUSTIN, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's nice to see you. How have you been? What have you been up to? How are you keeping yourself busy these days amidst these dual strikes?
Well, the day before the writer's strike happened began, I had just gotten home from a second honeymoon with my husband. And thankfully, the acting school where I had been teaching off and on for several years offered me basically full time. So 8 classes a week. And I mean, I was excited to take it anyway, but I mean, it was really the luckiest thing that could possibly have happened because of the writer's strike, because everything shut down. So I've been teaching nonstop. And then I also run a bunch of social media accounts. So I am pretty exhausted, but not worried, if that
right.
is a thing. It's just, for the first time since 2008 that I've had to have extra jobs, I'm fortunate to teach because I actually love it and I would do it even if I didn't have to. But to pay the bills, I have to right now. So I'm really glad I can do it.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone can survive a writer's strike or an actor's strike, it's actors and writers. We've been learning to gig the entire time and we have to be resourceful and you got to do all these other things.
Exactly. And I mean, most of us were not as fortunate as, these CEOs to have been born with kind of like a silver spoon in their mouth. And I know that that's not universal, but a lot of them come from a lot of money. Most actors and most writers and directors and, most artists have had to have, waiting tables jobs or some sort of struggle where they're like, okay, well, I can't afford to buy celery this week, so I guess my salad is just going to be lettuce. We've all gone through those hardships. So when they were like, we're going to smoke you out, we're going to make sure that you guys starve, we're like, okay, well, we know how to do that. So what else? And also, artists always find a way to make their art. And we're proving it right now that we're still out there doing our thing. So it's not going to stop just because somebody's not giving us the regular kind of permission. Hopefully they come to their senses and we do get that studio backing soon. But otherwise, we're going to find a way. It's going to happen.
Totally. And do you put celery in your salads?
Do you not put celery in your salads?
No, it gets stuck in my teeth. It's terrible. Like that would be the first, I wouldn't even consider that.
Well, you slice it like small enough and then it doesn't, I promise it doesn't get in your teeth, or at least it doesn't get in mine. My husband might have different feelings.
It's just an overlooked vegetable in my house. I don't know. Not to discount all the important things you were saying, but that kind of like,
You just got stuck on celery.
I kind of got stuck on celery. I did. I can't. Yeah. Well, so I know where you're teaching, but tell our listeners where you're teaching, because I also am a product of the same school and think very, very highly of it.
That's where we met.
Yes.
I teach the Meisner technique at the Ruskin School of Acting in Santa Monica. And I'm actually super grateful to them. In addition to allowing me to teach the Meisner technique with them, John Ruskin and Mikey Myers also allowed me to just sort of develop my own class called The Business of the Business, where I really go through how to set up your business as an actor, how to run your own small business, because in a sense, that's exactly what we're doing. And nobody teaches that. Nobody teaches how to take a good headshot, how to structure your resume. What do you put on your resume? How to develop a reel if you don't have a lot of footage yet. Like, how can you edit your own so that you're not spending $1 gajillion before you even get your career going? So I get to go around when I'm not teaching the regular class, or when I switch with another teacher, I get to go around and teach that. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I wish that they had that when I was there.
Me too. I just ended up falling on my face a lot and wasting a ton of money. So I'm trying to prevent that from happening for our future students.
Right. Do you find, given the current state of the entertainment industry, Do you find it harder to inspire new people coming into it when it is so challenging?
It's funny. I haven't really seen the enthusiasm drop because, again, like I was talking about earlier, artists just want to make their art. And, if they're doing a really great scene in class, then that's cool. If they're doing a really great play, that's great. The students now, and a lot of it has changed since, 20 years ago when I was starting, they have the ability to go out and make their own stuff. We were still reliant on film cameras and, all of this, really expensive equipment where now anybody can make a movie on their iPhone. You can shoot 4 or 6K on an iPhone. And you can get microphones off of Amazon.com for not that expensive. So it's a completely different ballgame from when I started in the dinosaur years when cell phones had just been invented. So they're all making their own stuff. And I'm really showing them like how they can become writers. They can become filmmakers through that business class. And several of them have made movies and actually been able to join the union because of the movies that they've made.
That's fantastic.
It's really cool. Yeah.
So are you still doing stand-up comedy?
Oh gosh, no. Stand-up comedy, it got me writing, which was like a really great thing. But the last stand-up show I did, I was headlining. So I had to do like a 20-minute set. And my brain erased the experience. Like, I know that it happened because my husband got it on camera and people laughed. I told jokes. I was there. But I don't actually remember being there. And I was like, I think this is what they call trauma. So I stopped doing it because I was never really wanting to be a stand-up comic like on tour or anything. I started doing it off of a dare. I had a coworker who was like, I dare you to do stand-up. And I'm like, I'm the worst person if like the dare is not actually going to hurt me. I'm like, okay. And so I took a class and started doing it and then started getting booked on shows. But I never really was like, wow, this is it. This is the thing for me. And I just would like think that I was dying backstage and then go, I am Beyonce, and then walk out on stage and like tell jokes for 7 minutes. It was never like the feeling that I get when I'm on stage acting or like when I'm in front of the camera on a movie or something.
Interesting.
The nerves, Peter, just made me feel like I was dying.
Yeah, no, I've always been too afraid to try it.
I don't recommend it. It's not great.
Yeah, but the ones who do it well, I have so much admiration for.
Oh, me too.
It's so hard to do good improv. It's so hard to do good stand-up. And when you're watching bad improv or
bad stand-up, it is brutal.
It's brutal because you feel like you're not enjoying it, and then you feel bad for whoever's doing the comedy.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, it's just not a good feeling.
I mean, I saw so much sadness too, like backstage with the other comics. I was like, this is just wow. And I was used to like the theater kid energy of like, we're all great, yay. And it was just the complete opposite. And also, I go to bed at 9 o'clock. I love sleep. So, it's just not very conducive to like the stand-up lifestyle where they're like, and you're going to go on at 10. I'm like, AM, hopefully. It's just, I'm not the target audience for the stand-up stuff anyway. So
gotcha. Well, I do want to hear obviously about your sleep and your bedtime routine because that's relevant to the podcast. But before I do, I wanted, so tell me a little bit about the children's book you wrote a few years ago.
Thank you for asking about that. So I used to be a spokesperson for the Clearwater Marine Aquarium. We went around because the story of Winter the dolphin inspired just millions of people. And I'm not exaggerating with the millions. She really did. And her overcoming story just really impacted especially children in the hospital. And so as a part of my spokesperson job for them, I would go around to various children's hospitals in the region and visit the kids. And one kid that I saw, it was like looking in a mirror from my childhood. And I asked her mom, I said, oh, does she have post-orbital and periorbital cellulitis? And her mom was like, yes. And who are you? And I was like, oh, hi. I actually had that when I was a kid. And, I had these 2 life-saving surgeries and this and that. And by the time I was finished finished talking, she was crying. My coworkers were crying. And I was like, what's happening? And everybody was like, you've never told us this story. You've got to tell the story. And it inspired me to write and illustrate a children's book, which my parents were thrilled with because I actually used my art degree for the first time. So I basically wrote the children's books to inspire kids that are in the hospital to make them feel less alone, because it can be a very scary place. You know, the IVs and the doctors and all these people coming in and out of your room. And it's a very overwhelming experience. So I kind of just wanted to share my story of being in the hospital over Christmas and, you know, that I'm okay now. So it's been a really interesting journey. I'd never experienced anything like writing and trying to get a book published and getting it published and all of that. But it was a really fulfilling experience to be able to know that there was a couple kids that I really helped through their time in the hospital.
That's amazing. So could you tell us the name of the book and
yes.
where we can find it?
It's called The Miracle Tree, and you can get it on my website. I think it's themiracletreebook.com, but it's also available. There's a link on my personal website, which is austinhighsmithofficial.com. There's a whole page dedicated to the book where you can buy it.
Well, so you've already mentioned that you're not much of a night owl.
Nope.
And you value your sleep, as do I. It's one of the reasons I started this. Sleep's important. If I don't get enough of it, you don't want to know me. It's not a good thing.
You don't want to know me.
Yeah. So how do you ensure that the best version of awake Austin is out and about amongst the people? What are your wind down routines and all of that?
Well, I have very special and expensive pillows. As you get older, you buy really fancy pillows because you can't just go with like the ones you get at TJ Maxx anymore. You've got to get like specialized ones, or else if you get 8 hours of sleep, your neck and back are like, oh, you did it wrong. So I've got really great pillows by Coop. It's COOP, Coop pillows. They're just magical. And so I've got those pillows, and then I've got like another little special pillow. I have so many pillows. My husband calls it the wall of hate because I put them in between us to like, you know, boost up my shoulders and stuff. And then I have a sound machine that like I carry that sound machine with me everywhere.
You're hardcore.
Yes. Oh, I'm very hardcore. I also have a face mask that I can put over my eyes if for some reason.
Oh, I do that too. Is it like concave, like so that like you can go into REM and your eyelashes will flutter and it won't hit it? Like,
it's not that
like goggles
fancy.
Almost.
It's not that fancy because I have to like.
It's amazing
because of like all of my medical conditions. This is going to sound so weird, but like I can't have anything that like will leave substantial sleep lines because it takes my face like 6 hours to wake up in the morning. So if I have to be anywhere where I don't want them to think that like I got punched in the face repeatedly, then I can't wear like a heavy duty eye mask.
No, this is gentle. There's no marks.
Oh,
There's
okay.
no marks.
Interesting.
It's just got a cup to it.
I'll need that link when we're done.
I need to start getting some paid endorsements here. We got Coop. We got, I often talk about sleepy time tea because that's my go-to. A little children's melatonin. Just the 1 milligram is all I need. So how much sleep do you get on a perfect night of sleep? What's your goal?
8 to 9 hours. And then I also take a 1 hour nap every day.
Fellow napper, I love it. I take a 30-minute nap. An hour I feel is too long for me.
Yeah, people are like, how do you function afterwards? And I'm like, how do you function without it? And like my naps are like under the covers, closed blinds, sound machine, everything. Like I am serious about it.
Do you do earplugs?
No, I just like cat paw my husband if he snores. But other than that, like the sound machine it just drowns everything out.
Well, I do sound machine, earplugs, and mask under the covers, fan cranking. I've been napping since I was in college.
I've been napping my whole life. And like my family are also huge nappers. Like everybody in my family loves a nap. We call them nizzies, and we've called them nizzies for forever. And so we're like, I got to go take a nizzy. And like everybody schedules nap time. Like it's been such a part of my life. Like I almost flipped my desk in second grade when they were like, oh, no nap time. I was like, what is this? Because I just love nap time. And so does like my whole family. I think, Peter, we all have medical conditions, but I'm the only one who's acknowledged it, to be honest. So Because all of my stuff is genetic. So I'm like, I can't be the only one. That's not how genes work.
And it's nice to hear that it's a whole family of nappers, because I feel like there's a lot of nap shaming that goes on in America, right? You know, you go to places like Spain and they're like, they take the afternoon off.
Yeah, they've got it down.
Well, it's nice to speak with a fellow nap enthusiast.
Likewise. Let's get this going so that we can both take our naps.
Okay, let's get this going. So, the first word for the story duel is oven. Once upon a time, there was a young girl named Amanda. And Amanda was an only child with a very wild imagination. And she was a really smart kid, but she had trouble focusing in school. She didn't have the best grades. Like during math, she always wanted to draw things or write stories. And during English class or history, she was like 10 years old. She was a 10-year-old girl. So during like social studies, history, she would want to write stories about anything else. And she had an amazing imagination. She would write stories about faraway lands with mythical creatures and dragons and things. And she had a really, really wild imagination. So one day she was home. She was a latchkey kid, and you know, kids listening today probably don't know what that is, but back in the 80s when this story takes place, oftentimes key was left for a child because both parents worked and they just sort of had to fend for themselves when they got home from school. And she was very responsible. Even though she had her head in the clouds, often, you know, she was someone who could be trusted home alone for a short period of time. It was usually like an hour between getting dropped off by the school bus and the time her parents got home. So one day, she was home alone. She just gotten home from school. She had sort of a rough ride on the school bus. Some of the kids were picking on her. She didn't have too many friends because, again, her head was always in a different place than everybody else's. She always felt a little bit different. When she got home, she got through the door. Her little dog named Barkley, who was named after the Sesame Street dog because when she was a little kid, she loved Sesame Street. Her little dog Barkley came up and greeted her, and she gave Barkley a milk bone dog treat, and he went on his way. And she wanted to fix herself a little snack, so she walked into the kitchen, and as she passed by the oven, she heard a voice coming from inside the oven.
When she opened the oven, there was this little man inside, and he had on a tall, pointy red cap. And he said, "Hey, Amanda, do you know what will happen to your drawings if you put them in here?" And at first she was a little scared because why is there a man in her oven? And she said, how do you know my name? And he said, do you remember when you were a little girl, you were about 4 or 5 years old, and you had an imaginary friend named William? And she said, yeah. And he said, that's me. I'm your imaginary friend. And I've just been hanging out in here waiting to share what can happen when you put your drawings and your short stories in this oven. And she was like, well, what is going to happen? So he said, okay, go get your math notebook because I know that you drew that amazing castle today when you were supposed to be listening to Mrs. Polsky talk about algebra. And she said, okay. So Amanda runs to her backpack and she unzips it as fast as she can. And she flips through the pages. And she's so excited as she walks back to see William still standing there in the oven. And he said, okay, hand it to me and then crank the oven 3 times. And she said, well, isn't that going to make you burn? And he said, normally it would, but not when I'm in here because it's the magic oven when I'm inside. So she put her drawing in there that had this beautiful castle that she had imagined going to and climbing, and then there was going to be beautiful unicorns inside of the castle that she was going to be able to ride all around all of the castle walls. So she put the magic notebook in the magic oven and cranked the oven 3 times. And she sat back and waited. And at first, nothing happened. And she thought, was that a dream? That was crazy. And then all of a sudden, she hears a gentle knocking from inside the oven. And as soon as she opens the door, it sucks her inside. And all of a sudden, she is in the castle that she drew. And she and William are standing on top of the biggest, tallest brick walls. And they're looking out over these beautiful green fields. And she hears something. And she said, William, what is that? And he said, those are your unicorns, Amanda. And she said, what? I have unicorns? And he said, absolutely. So she turns around and she runs to where the unicorns are neighing. And she and William get on the back of 2 different unicorns. And they start to gallop across that beautiful green countryside that she only saw in her mind. And they're running and they're laughing and the sky is so blue and they are having the best time. And she's like, oh my gosh, William, how am I going to get back to where I live? Aren't my parents going to worry about me? And he said, don't worry, Amanda. This is where we are. It's called your imagination. And we can go anywhere we want. And it doesn't matter because as soon as your parents get home, we'll know. So she says, okay, let's go down to that beautiful lake and go swimming. And he said, okay, no problem. So they take off. They're galloping on their unicorns and they get right up to the edge of the lake.
And they stopped suddenly because in the middle of the lake was this gigantic sea monster. It looked like the Loch Ness monster, the monster of legends. The legend of the Loch in Scotland. The mythical beast. Even though they weren't in Scotland, they were in Amanda's head somewhere, deep in her imagination. And her heart started racing. She was terrified. And William said, don't be afraid. This is Nessie's younger sister, Bessie. And she's totally cool. And she's here to take you on a tour of the underwater mysteries of your imagination. And Amanda was like, wait, how is that going to work? Like, do you have scuba gear for me? Because no, William said. This is your imagination. You can breathe underwater just like a fish. You can do anything you want here. This is your world, and you're making the rules. And Bessie, from the distance, said, yeah, Amanda, come on, get in the water. It feels great. Hop on my back. I'm going to take you for a little tour. So Amanda got off of her unicorn. She was nervous because she wasn't a great swimmer. And William picked up on that hesitation. And he said, Amanda, you're like an Olympic swimmer in your imagination. Just go for it. Just get in there. So she took a deep breath and she dove in. And she swam and she swam and she wondered, could I really breathe underwater? But she was too nervous. She was holding her breath for the longest time. But finally she decided to just run with her imagination. This was like a dream, right? One of those dreams where you can fly, where you can breathe underwater. And she did. She took a breath. And suddenly gills formed on either side of her neck. And she was swimming. She was swimming free in this gigantic lake. It was a big lake. It was like one of the Great Lakes, like Superior. I think that's the biggest one because it's Superior. And she swam and swam and swam, and she swam underneath Bessie, and she climbed up on Bessie's back. She had the biggest smile on her face. And she said to Bessie, she said, okay, what now? And Bessie said, hold on tight, we're going under. So they dove under the water.
And as they dove, Amanda was just so surprised at what she was seeing under the water. There were mermaids down there. There were fish that could talk to her. It was just like being in a movie that she had always dreamt of being a part of. The mermaids were playing soccer with their fins, and she thought, oh my gosh, I can probably be great at this because I have legs. She was watching them cook underwater, which was so funny because how can fire work underwater? In your imagination, anything is possible. So she is going with Bessie all around this incredible underwater just village and town. Everyone was so happy, and they already knew her. They all said, hey, Amanda, how's it going? And she was just so surprised that they knew her name. And they said, honey, we see you in your dreams every single night, and we are so excited when you come back to visit us. You're our best friend. We love you. We wouldn't exist without you. It's because of you and all of the things that live in your imagination that we get to be who we are. This just made Amanda feel so great because as a kid, when you're not really understood and when you don't have a lot of friends, it can get very lonely. And to realize that she had so many creatures and people and everything that knew her and loved her and understood her, it just made her heart feel so happy. So Bessie keeps swimming with her, and they go up and they see this unbelievable rainbow forming above the lake. And Bessie said, do you want to go there too? And she said, what do you mean? She said, well, this is your imagination. We can fly. So Bessie takes off flying, and Amanda is holding onto her back as tight as she can. And they fly up over the entire rainbow from end to end. Oh, Amanda is having the time of her life. And then she gets a little hungry because, when we're playing really hard, sometimes we need a snack. So Bessie said, don't worry, William and the unicorns will take you back to the castle, and you guys can enjoy a little snack. So as they get back on shore, she gets onto the unicorn with William. He's been waiting there very patiently on his unicorn, and they gallop and gallop and gallop all the way back to the castle. And William says, well, what do you think you would like to have for a snack? And she said, my grandmother used to make this really, really delicious peach cobbler in the summers, and I think that I would really like to have that for my snack, but we would need my oven for that.
And William said, okay, well, here's what I want you to do. I just want you to imagine a peach cobbler cooking in the oven. I want you to close your eyes and imagine a peach cobbler. And so she did. She closed her eyes, and he said, I want you to imagine that smell, and I want you to imagine your grandmother, and I want you to imagine you are home, and you're about to dive in and take a delicious bite of that peach cobbler. So she closed her eyes, she took some breaths, she started to picture it all, and he said, now I want you to open your eyes. And she did. And when she opened her eyes, she was not in the castle anymore. She was home, and she heard the keys jingle in the lock of the front door, and it was her mother who had just come home from work. And she walked in to see Amanda eating a peach cobbler. And it was the most beautifully crafted peach cobbler. All the lines on the pie crust were perfect. It smelled amazing. And she said, Amanda, I knew you were a very independent, responsible girl, but I had no idea you knew how to make a peach cobbler. And Amanda said, well, you can kind of make anything if you put your mind to it. And her mom just kind of laughed, and Amanda cut a piece for her mom, and they sat down and they shared some cobbler. And it was the most delicious cobbler she ever had. And the whole time they were enjoying their cobbler together, she just kept thinking back to her adventures with William and all the friends she made along the way, and all those characters who wouldn't exist without her and her imagination, who appreciated her and respected her. And she always kept that memory. So even on her toughest day at school, she would always have that, and it got her through those tough times. And occasionally, on a really bad day, she would just open the oven and see if William was there. Sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't. But when he was, she would go on some adventures and sort of hit the reset button and feel good again. And she did this throughout all of her childhood until she got to the point in real life where she never lost her imagination, but she learned how to respect herself and to love herself and to be confident in herself, even when maybe others didn't see it. And she always had her friend William to talk to if she ever had a bad day. The end. Austin, are you ready for your solo story?
Let's do it.
Okay. The word is pants.
There's a neighborhood in New York City. It's called Washington Heights. There's mainly people that are descendants of Dominican Republic immigrants and Puerto Rican immigrants. And oh my goodness, is that such a colorful neighborhood. There's so much dancing. There's so much food. Everybody is happy. And everyone it just seems like they're all family. Well, a little 9-year-old girl named Sophia was growing up in Washington Heights, and she had always admired the salsa dancers and all of their beautiful moves and how much fun they seemed to have as they were dancing. And that's all she wanted, was to be a salsa dancer when she grew up. But their family didn't have a ton of money, and the salsa costumes, well, they kind of cost a lot of money. And she didn't have any clue how she was going to be able to compete in any of these competitions if she couldn't even wear the right clothing, if she couldn't even afford the dresses or the pants with the fringes on them. So Sophia decided to get creative. She did what she saw her mom do, which is figure out a way to make it work. Her mom was a really strong woman and always worked really hard for her kids, and so did her dad. And they always made sure that no matter what, they would figure it out. So Sophia thought, what could I possibly do that could help my family and help me to be able to afford my dream of being a salsa dancer? And she thought, well, I do know how to make cookies because my grandmother taught me how to make cookies. So maybe I could just go downstairs to the little bodega and buy some flour and some sugar and some eggs and some chocolate chips, because what cookie should be sold without chocolate chips? So she went downstairs and she got all of the ingredients, and she came back upstairs and started baking these cookies. Well, she hadn't done it in a little while, so her first batch got so burned that, oh my goodness, they could be used as hockey pucks. Well, she certainly couldn't sell these. Nobody was going to buy those to help pay for her salsa dream. But Sophia decided, you know what? I can't give up. Just because I didn't succeed the first time doesn't mean that I'm not ever going to succeed. So she tried again. The second batch was a little better, but she accidentally put way too much baking soda in them, so they kind of tasted like soap. So she said, okay, you know what? Let's try again, because the only thing that you learn from is your failures. You don't really learn that much from when you succeed, because you don't have any lessons that you can take away. This third time that she sat in to make the cookies, she made sure that she was paying very close attention to every single thing that she was putting into that batter. She made sure that the flour was the right amount, the butter was the right amount, the eggs, the baking soda, the salt, because my goodness, you don't want salty cookies. And then those chocolate chips. She would put them into her hands and she would roll them around slowly so she would make sure that they were all the same size. And then she put them on the cookie sheet and put them in the oven. And oh my goodness, they turned out perfect. And then she thought, okay, well, I've got my cookies. Now what? And then she remembered that Miss Patty down from the bodega sometimes lets people sell things at her store. So she wrapped up all the cookies in nice little pink packages, and she took them down to Miss Patty and said, Miss Patty, is there any way that I could possibly sell my cookies here because I really want to buy some of those fancy pants, you know, the ones with the fringes on them that the really fancy salsa girls wear, so that I could possibly do the salsa competitions. And Miss Patty said, oh, honey, absolutely. So she let Sophia make a little stand, and she wrote in her little handwriting, Sophia's cookies. Well, let me tell you, when the guys got out of work that afternoon and they stopped by the bodega to pick up a soda on the way home, they all saw Sophia's cookies, and they sold out so fast. And Sophia was upstairs. She had no clue. And all of a sudden, she's upstairs doing her tarea, her homework. She hears this frantic knock on the door. And she's like, oh no, what happened? And she runs to the door, and it's Miss Patty. And Miss Patty said, Sophia, I don't know what you put in those cookies, but they are all gone, and I need more. We have a line around the corner. And Sophia thought, what? My cookies? Really? Oh my gosh. So she ran into the kitchen, and she threw on her apron, and she started to bake. And she baked and baked and baked and baked. And then before she knew it, she had $300, all from selling her cookies, all because she didn't give up on herself. And she went down to the salsa store, and she was so excited and so ready to buy those pants. Well, guess what? When she went inside, Ricardo was working behind the store counter, and he said, Sophia, Miss Patty came in here, and she told me about what you were doing. There is no way I can let you pay for these pants. I'm going to give them to you for free. And honey, I want you to take that $300, and I want you to help your family, because we just love you so much, and we all believe in you. Sophia had tears in her eyes as she picked up those bright red, fringy pants that she knew were just gonna fly and float as she did all of her spins and turns. She thanked Ricardo, and she said, you know what? I'm going to invite you to my first show, and I'm going to give you tickets to the front row. And he said, I know you will, honey, and I will be right there. Sophia ran upstairs, and she showed her mom and her dad, and then she gave them the $300 that she had earned with her hard work through selling her cookies. And they gave her a big hug, and they said, sweetheart, we just know that you are going to be successful at whatever you put your mind to, because you are so smart, and you are so humble, and you're so kind, and we cannot wait to support you in all of your dreams. So that night, as Sophia was getting ready to go to bed, she thought to herself, I don't want this to be over. I think I could help a lot of people through my cookies. And so she kept baking. She kept baking and baking and baking when she wasn't at salsa class, of course. And before she knew it, she had started a little cookie company. Sophia's salsa cookies, they don't actually have salsa on them, started to be a huge hit in Washington Heights. And the years led to years, and Sophia's salsa cookies took off, and she ended up having a cookie empire that helped so many families in Washington Heights and helped kids be able to pursue their dreams through the proceeds. Sophia had no idea that day when she set out to make her first batch of cookies just to buy a pair of pants that she was going to be able to help so many families and so many kids just by not giving up. The end.